The Department of Justice now under fire for what President Trump is calling slow walking the investigation into FISA abuses. But after being called out, the department now making moves speeding things up and appointing U.S. Attorney John Loesch to oversee the pace of the documents release. But would the stalling have continued had he not been? Here now to debate it is liberal commentator Wendy Osefo and New York City Councilman Joe Borelli. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Wendy, I'll start with you. Do you think there's slow walking going on?
No, I don't think they're slow walking. They requested millions of documents, so it's just going to take time, and there's bureaucratic red tape that comes with that. What I think is really important is that Wray came out and said on March 27th that he's going to assign more agents to be able to produce the documents that are needed. But what is not a good thing is for Trump to continuously use Twitter as a means to attack his own Department of Justice. It's just absurd for us to continue to attack our own government. They're doing the best they can, and from what I'm hearing, those documents will be released today. So to be late only 3 days does not warrant an attack on Twitter.
Well, speaking of using Twitter, let's pull up this tweet from Saturday. President Trump writes, quote, "What does the Department of Justice and FBI have to hide? Why aren't they giving the strongly requested documents unredacted to the House Judiciary Committee? Stalling, but for what reason? Not looking good." Joe, who do you agree with, Wendy or President Trump and his tweet?
Well, it's not looking good. Look, there's a reason our founders put the Congress in Article 1 of the Constitution and the executive branch in Article 2. The FBI and DOJ are subject to, not above, the laws of the House of Representatives and Senate. And when you see an agency potentially with bad actors stonewalling an investigation by the people we, the people, have sent to Washington for this purpose, the president, and frankly, we all should be right to question this. Every time we peel back a layer of the onion that is the FBI and DOJ, we seem to uncover more bias, whether it's the Strzok emails, whether it's this new Loretta Lynch documents that are suddenly found, whether it's Comey perjuring himself. Everything leads to red flags, and it's a marching band of red flags at this point.
And Wendy, if something seems to be taking a long time, you know, that's someone's opinion, but if something seems to be taking a long time, isn't it fair to get something done about it?
It is fair to get something done about it. And again, that's why I think that's really important that, you know, the Department of Justice came on and said that they think that the procedural red tape for documents is relatively slow, and they're going to work on addressing that. But again, let's look at this in context. We are talking about 3 days late, right? If they end up releasing these documents today, it's one thing to stonewall and never produce the documents. It's one thing to impede on the investigation. But just to be tardy, again, does not warrant us to have the type of conversations that make it seem like the entire department is corrupt when that is not the case.
Joe, Wendy pointed out the fact that, okay, it's a couple days late, but do you think that we would be having this conversation in the way that we are about the documents supposedly being released at some point soon, possibly today, if it weren't for the appointment of John Loesch?
No, and just look at the past precedent of what the FBI has been willing to disclose to people like Tom Fitton, who you had on earlier in Judicial Watch. Every time there seems to be a question of the FBI's actors, no, it is not the entire FBI, it is not the DOJ, but when it's a question of the actors on the top levels who are political appointees, we see time and time again that there is some implicit bias. Just look at the way that they handled the Clinton investigation, where they exonerated her in a statement before they even investigated her, versus how they look at Donald Trump, where there's just this wild hypothesizing over a crime that isn't even a crime on the books.
Wendy, final word.
I just wanted to make sure that we're not mixing apples with oranges. The individuals who were under attack were under a different administration. What we're talking about here are people that were appointed by President Trump. So let's make sure that we are not attacking an entire department and saying that they are bad actors when they are not. These are hardworking men and women who serve our country and have served our country honorably. And that's what we need to make sure that we continue to put at the forefront of this discussion.
Wendy and Joe, thank you for joining us.